Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The First Amendment, court packing, her record on crime and defending terrorists. President Biden's Supreme Court nominee faced hours of tough questioning during her confirmation hearings yesterday, including questions about her faith.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson is the first black woman to be nominated to the high court. While she's expected to pass the Democratic majority Senate, Republicans are not giving her a free pass. CBN's Tara Mergener reports.
Day two was certainly a more contentious day on Capitol Hill. With introductions out of the way, Republicans took their time focusing on how Jackson's record might influence her decisions on the high court.
Please raise your right hand.
Several hours of vetting on day two, with Jackson's judicial philosophy in the spotlight.
I hope that you will see how much I love our country and the Constitution and the rights that make us free.
As each senator gets 30 minutes, Republicans are drilling down. It began with the ranking member questioning her interpretation of the Constitution.
Do the First Amendment free speech protections apply equally to conservative and liberal protesters?
Yes, Senator.
Republicans are also honing in on court packing, Jackson's role representing detainees at Guantanamo Bay.
Why in the world would you call Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld and George W. Bush war criminals in a legal filing?
And criticism that is both defender and judge that she's been soft on crime and child predators.
Every single case, 100% of them, when prosecutors came before you with child pornography cases, you sentenced the defenders to substantially below not just the guidelines, which are way higher, but what the prosecutor asked for on average of these cases, 47.2% less.
The judge is not playing a numbers game. The judge is looking at all of these different factors and making a determination in every case.
This is the 51-year-old's fourth confirmation appearance before the committee, where she previously gained GOP support for roles such as sitting on the D.C. Appeals Court. Though the president prefers a bipartisan confirmation vote, Democrats say they don't need it.
No one questions either your academic law school credentials or your service as clerk and as federal judge.
During the proceedings, Jackson, who stated her belief in God during opening statements, faced questions on her faith.
Do you attend church regularly?
Well, Senator, I am reluctant to talk about my faith in this way.
Senator Lindsey Graham assuring Jackson her faith will be treated respectfully, unlike Justice Amy Coney Barrett's.
Just imagine what would happen if people on late night television called you an effing nut, speaking in tongues because you've practiced the Catholic faith.
While Republicans raised concern about Jackson's record on abortion, she was clear about her stance on the subject.
Roe and Casey are the settled law of the Supreme Court concerning the right to terminate a woman's pregnancy. They have established a framework that the court has reaffirmed.
Jackson faces about 8 more hours of questioning today. Democrats are confident she will be confirmed by Easter. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Well, I'm confident that she will be confirmed as well, and I also think that she's qualified. But I have a very strong point of disagreement with her regarding Roe versus Wade, regarding Casey. And her quote, "The settled law of the Supreme Court," says it all. The Supreme Court does not have the authority under the Constitution to pass laws. And that's exactly what they did with these cases. They took that power away from the legislature, which has the constitutional authority. They said, we know better than you. We're going to accelerate social change because we think this is the right thing to do. They didn't think it was the constitutional thing to do. And the Supreme Court passed laws. That creates social disruption. The whole circus that we've been seeing now for decades about Supreme Court nominations and confirmation processes. Instead of looking at qualifications, we get into this circus of looking at children's books from the school that she's on the board. We get into questions about how often you go to church. We get into these other things, which really has no place here, but it's having a place because of the confirmation process. What happened to Kavanaugh, what happened to Barrett were absolute travesties, and it's because of the Supreme Court decisions. When the Supreme Court starts making law, the justices need to take a step back and say, no, this is not our place. Judicial restraint should be the order of the day. Otherwise, you're going to create these absolutely incredible unintended consequences. But that's the reason we're in the mess we're in today. That's why all of this social disruption is happening. People feel disenfranchised. They feel they have no control over their own government. Their own government doesn't pay attention to their belief system. The government runs roughshod over bakers in California. These things are all because of what the Supreme Court has done. In other news, a tornado ripped through parts of New Orleans overnight. John Jessup has more on that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That is right, Gordon. At least one person died and several were injured when the twister struck the Crescent City and its suburbs. Several neighborhoods took a direct hit last night as high winds lifted homes off their foundations, ripped off roofs, and left thousands without power. It also did extensive damage to this church. The same storm system spawned dozens of tornadoes in parts of Mississippi, Texas, and Oklahoma. An EF3 with up to 150-mile-an-hour winds tore through Jacksboro, Texas, damaging dozens of homes and buildings, including a high school. Fortunately, only minor injuries reported so far. One family taking cover in their bathroom.
The thing coming up, and when we stood up, water was hitting us in the face. I cried and said, I'm not leaving this room. I'm scared to death.
That storm system is now moving east and could bring flooding, heavy winds, and possibly even more tornadoes. Turning now to the war in Ukraine, President Biden expected to announce new sanctions against Russian lawmakers on his upcoming trip to NATO. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are making gains as the fighting enters the 28th day. CBN's Charlene Aaron reports.
A victory for Ukrainian forces as they retake the strategic town of Makariv, an important suburb in western Kyiv, allowing them to block the Russians from surrounding the capital. This as Russia continues to see setbacks on the front lines. A senior U.S. defense official says the Russian military has lost 10% of its combat power in Ukraine, and troops are running low on food and fuel. On CBN's Faith Nation, James Brooke, visiting fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, described Russia's dwindling combat power.
Putin is desperate. It's very clear. In less than 1 month, 3 times the number of tanks have been destroyed in Ukraine as were destroyed during a decade in Afghanistan.
With the invasion bogged down, there are fears Russia could turn to chemical weapons. One Russian official even refusing to rule out the use of nuclear weapons.
If it is an existential threat for our country, then it can be used in accordance with our concept.
We're day 28 into this war, and the estimates are that the Russians have lost between 10,000 and 16,000 of their soldiers, including 5 to 6 top generals. To put those numbers in perspective, during the Soviet 10-year war in Afghanistan, they lost about 15,000 troops.
In the south, Ukrainians still hold the besieged port city of Mariupol, despite constant pounding. More than 200,000 people have fled Mariupol. Only about 100,000 remain, and they're cut off from food and water and power. Ukrainian authorities say Russia detained 15 rescue workers from a humanitarian convoy bringing food and other supplies to people in the city. According to the UN Refugee Agency, 10 million people have now fled their homes in Ukraine, with more than 3.5 million seeking refuge in neighboring nations. Meanwhile, President Biden departs today for a NATO summit in Brussels, where he'll be discussing the possibility of keeping U.S. troops in Eastern Europe for the long term. On Friday, he'll go to Poland to discuss the growing humanitarian crisis. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thank you, Charlene. With more than 2 million people so far, Poland has taken in the majority of Ukrainian refugees. Those crossing the border are finding relief and comfort from CBN's Operation Blessing.
We are here at the Medica border crossing where many thousands of people are crossing every night. And they're crossing from Ukraine into Poland to find a safe shelter for the night. And Operation Blessing is here to provide assistance to the many people who are crossing, from handing out blankets to serving hot and fresh coffees and hot chocolates and teas, to also providing in the tent next door rest and recovery for families and people who are on the move. But this is all possible because of your help. So thank you so much for supporting the work of Operation Blessing. Thank you for praying for our teams, but particularly praying for the people of Ukraine right now.
Such vital work. Gordon?
If you want to be a part of the relief effort, there's a real easy way for you to do it. Give us a call. 1-800-700-7000. Say, I want to give to the Operation Blessing Disaster Relief Fund. You can also write to us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia, 23463. Just put Disaster Relief Fund on the memo line of your check. You can text OB Crisis to 71777, and a giving page will come up on your phone. Or you can go to cbn.com. Either way, do it now. Be a help to those who have so much need. They've fled a war zone, literally with the clothes on their back, with their children. They have nothing. They have no prospects, no ability to earn an income on their own. They're going to need help, and they're going to need help for the long term. So if you want to be a part of it, give us a call. 1-800-700-7000.